Introduction and the weight of past stardom. We begin with a sobering portrait of Bud Abbott in his later years. The image is quite vivid. He stares out of the window of his ENCINO home well past noon, donning slippers and a bathrobe, contemplating the emptiness of a day with no job to go to and no creative outlet that might reignite the spark he once had. It's a dramatic contrast to the era when he and Lou Costello were at the pinnacle of show business success. Their partnership officially ended in 1957, after 2 decades of comedic triumph. The text also notes that Lou Costello died on March 3, 1959, meaning that Bud had to navigate his post-partnership years entirely without the friend and comedic partner who had been integral to his life and to the act that made them household names. If we consider the psychology of comedic duos, often the individuals within them form close bonds that are difficult to replicate. The comedic interplay thrives on trust, mutual timing, and the distinct dynamic they cultivate over time. Losing that not only undercuts a performer's livelihood but also diminishes a deeply personal relationship. Furthermore, Bud's reflection in the window can be interpreted as a metaphor for looking back on everything he once had. The neglected brown lawns might symbolize what he feels internally, a once thriving comedic career that, much like the lawn, is now withering due to lack of resources or attention. It's a poignant beginning that sets the stage for a story defined by both triumph and tragedy. Daily life at home. An emerging hardship in this snapshot of everyday life, the grandeur of Bud's past stands in stark contrast to the household scene. Mrs. Abbott is unwell, and Bud Jr. is occupying himself with youthful pursuits, tinkering with a hot rod. Meanwhile, Bud, once a powerhouse in Hollywood, is drifting through his day with no sense of purpose. The routine of family life might seem mundane, but it underscores how the extraordinary can become ordinary when the sparkle of fame fades. This shift from days of abundance to an atmosphere of destitution and isolation is particularly striking. It implies that the Abbott family once lived a life of ease and celebration, surrounded by fans, friends, and an industry that valued their comedic genius. Now, the camera lens zeroes in on a quieter home. There is no mention of calls from producers or urgent invitations to appear in new projects. The swirl of stardom that once surrounded Bud has fizzled. As we move forward, keep in mind that the loss of public adoration and financial security often exerts a tremendous psychological toll. The comedic persona Bud honed on stage would have been shaped by bursts of applause and public recognition. Without that, we see how a performer might struggle to define himself outside of show business. Financial crisis and selling assets. In the 1950s and 1960s, U.S. income tax rates for top earners were exceptionally high, sometimes climbing above 90%. For celebrities who enjoyed lavish lifestyles, or for those who lacked intricate financial planning, these realities could easily lead to crippling tax debt. Bud Abbott's predicament reflects a tragic pattern in old Hollywood: large incomes during peak popularity, but an equally large outflow driven by high living costs and insufficient preparation for downturns. Tax laws regarding entertainment expenses were notoriously complex. Many high-profile celebrities assumed that certain outlays were deductible, only to discover years later, through audits, that those expenses were disallowed. These discovered discrepancies would result in hefty back taxes, penalties, and interest. Selling a prized ranch, such as the one in Ojai, underscores the desperation and heartbreak of dismantling one's personal life just to square off with the government's demands. Meanwhile, the text also reminds us of the heartbreak of Lou Costello's death from a heart attack, an event that left Bud reeling both emotionally and, potentially, financially. Costello's passing the previous year not only cut short any hope of a rejuvenated duo but also left Bud solely responsible for his swirling tax and financial troubles. Additionally, the mention of shirts worth $30 might seem trivial by today's standards, but at that time, a $30 shirt was a symbol of luxury. The text cleverly signals the scale of Abbott's earlier wealth compared to his circumstances now. Lingering debts and the ENCINO property. The difference in their financial outcomes suggests a combination of luck and foresight. Costello's partial security might have stemmed from legal structures around his estate or a strategic choice to invest in the lasting intellectual property that syndicated TV shows could become. Bud, however, did not enjoy the same safety net. The 5-bedroom ranch-style residence in ENCINO was evidently part of the Hollywood dream: spacious, luxurious, symbolic of success. Yet, over 2 years, no buyer emerged to take it off his hands at the original price, forcing a reduction to $65,000. Moreover, the sprawling property had already shrunk from 4.5 acres to a single acre, with newly built houses populating the subdivided lots to help repay Bud's debts. This is a heartbreaking but common narrative for certain Golden Age stars, properties once employed for parties and gatherings suddenly becoming a series of smaller parcels sold piecemeal just to keep creditors at bay. For modern audiences, it might be surprising to see figures like $65,000 attached to a significant property. Real estate markets and currency values have changed drastically since then. But even in historical context, the precipitous drop in Bud's fortunes is painfully clear. Origins of fame with Costello. Now we step back in time to examine the brilliant rise of Abbott and Costello, a duo who originally performed on the burlesque circuit. Minsky's Burlesque in New York had a reputation for risque entertainment, yet it also served as a proving ground for comedic talents who needed to capture audiences' attention quickly. Abbott served as the perfect straight man, with Costello stepping into the role of the goofy, lovable comic whose antics left audiences in stitches. By 1940, the duo had set their sights on Hollywood. Once Universal Pictures recognized their potential, the comedic team soared to unexpected heights. Their original contract led to a whirlwind of film appearances, live performances, and eventually the legendary Who's on First routine that became an American comedic staple. This single bit remains so culturally significant that it has been referenced in movies, TV shows, sports broadcasts, and even academic settings as a quintessential example of wordplay and comedic timing. During their 12-year near dominance of the American box office, their incomes climbed to $500,000 per year, a massive sum in the mid-20th century. At their pinnacle, in 1953, their reported $1.75 million combined earnings were spectacular. But again, we return to the harsh reality: high earnings came hand in hand with high tax liabilities, and the comedic duo's lifestyle likely outpaced the strategies necessary to maintain financial security. It's worth noting that Abbott and Costello didn't just star in films, they appeared in radio shows, TV programs, and live stage tours. Their comedic brand was a multi-channel phenomenon that many modern entertainers would envy. The synergy of the straight man and the clownish buffoon is timeless, and they perfected that formula for millions of adoring fans. Tax burdens and managers' warnings: the 90% to 95% bracket is mind-boggling by today's standards, yet it was a reality for top-earning individuals in that era. Their manager Eddie Sherman warned them about the need to downsize, presumably because he recognized the insatiable appetite of both the U.S. tax system and the showbiz culture that demanded extravagance. Indeed, celebrities needed to look the part, a phenomenon still prevalent today. Maintaining a luxurious image to keep up appearances in front of press and fans can lead to unstoppable spending habits, especially if said celebrities aren't well versed in prudent saving or have never faced a downturn. By the time Bud turned 64, the government's deep audit laid bare years of questionable deductions and unrelenting interest piling onto existing debt. The sense of helplessness is palpable in Bud's lament: "A couple of years ago they invalidated this and invalidated that, and now I can't even stay afloat." This near-drowning sensation is a powerful image, once again capturing the emotional toll such financial straits can bring. In 1957, the partnership officially ended with a final joint appearance at the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas. The end of Abbott and Costello was also the end of a comedic era. The text clarifies that Lou himself requested the parting, driven at least in part by ongoing money-related conflicts. It's a reminder that the comedic chemistry fans witnessed on screen didn't always translate to an equally harmonious off-screen relationship, particularly when taxes and finances came into play. The misconstrued 50 Cents article: Bud Abbott presumably made an offhand remark, responding to a hypothetical question, only to find himself depicted as a man desperately seeking fan handouts for his debt. Public misinterpretations can wreak havoc on reputations, something that remains relevant today, albeit with the lightning speed of social media. The flood of half-dollar coins and letters from around North America showed that, despite the negative twist in the press, Bud still commanded a certain level of goodwill and nostalgia among fans who remembered the joy he provided. But the gesture, while kind, was not the financial windfall the article might have led readers to anticipate. Instead, it was a meager few $100s. This anecdote underscores an important element of celebrity culture: fans can be generous and deeply loyal, but the scale of a star's financial problems can be astronomical compared to what well-wishers can realistically provide. For Bud, this situation may have been both bittersweet appreciation for the love from fans, yet embarrassment for the public misunderstanding that he was actively begging. tarnished comeback hopes and Hollywood's fickleness. Even after Lou Costello's death, rumors circulated that Bud might find new success with Eddie Foy Jr. Despite those rumors, the new act didn't materialize in a way that could resurrect Bud's star power. Hollywood is notoriously mercurial. One day, a celebrity can be the town's darling, the next, they might barely get calls returned. Bud's realization that the town's affections fade quickly when the parties stop is a harsh reality for many entertainers. In a sense, Bud Abbott faced a perfect storm: personal grief over losing his longtime partner, an avalanche of tax debt, diminishing properties, and the ephemeral nature of Hollywood loyalty. It's likely that potential collaborators either feared inheriting his debts or believed his comedic heyday had passed. Once the momentum behind Abbott and Costello's brand fizzled, Bud was left with the sobering truth that success in entertainment can be as transient as the flicker of a marquee light. Strength of marriage and family life. We get a glimpse of the emotional backbone of Bud Abbott's life, his wife, Betty. Their quick marriage, after only 6 hours, seems impulsive by most standards, yet it endured for over 4 decades. This is an intriguing aspect of his personal story, underscoring that while Bud might have struggled with finances, he managed to maintain a solid marriage that outlasted both the rise and fall of his career. Betty's role is also crucial in these tough times. With their staff significantly reduced, a larger portion of the household responsibilities fell on her shoulders. One can only imagine the combined emotional strain of seeing her husband's career unravel, dealing with the practical repercussions of financial strain, and maintaining a semblance of normalcy for their children. It's also worth noting that Bud and Betty adopted their children, which speaks to their commitment to family life. Even as financial pressures mounted, their home remained a sanctuary for loved ones. The text mentions how both adopted children still reside under their roof, suggesting that despite the swirl of difficulties, the Abbott household put family unity front and center. Lost film rights and missed opportunities. Few things can be more painful to an entertainer than losing control or ownership of the creative works that catapulted them to fame. Abbott and Costello's Universal films remain comedic classics and are still watched and studied by fans and film historians alike. Letting go of rights to these films likely stemmed from Bud's urgent need for cash to address mounting debts. When Bud says he never laid eyes on the check, it suggests a sense of disillusionment. Perhaps deals were made behind the scenes by attorneys, agents, or even within the messy tangle of financial crises, leaving Bud with no tangible reward. The potential value of $1 million for these film rights is significant, especially in that time period. This underscores the importance of intellectual property in the entertainment world. Owning the rights to one's creative work can yield residuals, royalties, and other streams of income for years, if not decades, after original release. Unfortunately, many early Hollywood stars signed away these rights, unaware of the future value of TV syndication and home video markets. By the time Bud recognized what he had lost, it was too late. Unjust tax audits and legal hurdles. In a culture where celebrities often air grievances publicly, Bud Abbott's refusal to open his financial records might seem puzzling. However, his stance is understandable when considering the precarious position he was in. Engaging publicly could have exposed him to greater scrutiny, both from the public and the government. Also, if Bud truly believed he was being pursued unjustly, revealing details to journalists might have risked inadvertently providing more fodder for the very authorities he felt were treating him unfairly. Moreover, litigation is expensive. For someone already drowning in debt, legal fees posed another daunting barrier. Celebrities are not immune to the harsh realities of the justice system. While wealthy stars might easily hire top-notch lawyers, Bud's fortunes had declined too drastically for him to shoulder that burden. This scenario encapsulates the predicament of a star who once commanded millions but could no longer afford the costs of defending his own rights. Inescapable burden. In comparison to Chaplin, Bud openly referenced Charlie Chaplin, describing him as a massive international star who left the United States amid political and social controversies. By moving abroad, Chaplin was, in Bud's eyes, able to avoid the unrelenting scrutiny of U.S. authorities. Bud believed that because Chaplin was no longer on American soil, he effectively sidestepped some of the very tax and legal pressures that were crushing many domestic entertainers, Bud included. From Bud's perspective, the most frustrating piece of this puzzle was how American citizens could be easily pinned down by federal agencies, losing their assets or being pursued to the brink of bankruptcy. Meanwhile, someone who set up home overseas might negotiate from afar or benefit from different legal frameworks. It's easy to see why Bud felt embittered. He and Lou Costello brought immeasurable laughter to Americans, especially during wartime, offering a morale boost when people needed it most. For a comedian who believed he had served the public good, it was painful to feel singled out for unyielding tax enforcement while global icons like Chaplin seemed to maneuver with greater freedom. Fan circles at the time were somewhat divided. Some of Bud's devoted admirers empathized with his plight, writing letters to local newspapers and entertainment columns, questioning why the government came down so hard on beloved homegrown talents. Others argued that Chaplin's political battles, and his choice to leave the country, placed him in a completely different realm, one that wasn't just about evading taxes but also about personal convictions. The media latched onto Bud's mention of Chaplin, running headlines along the lines of "Abbott questions Chaplin's overseas escape." Hollywood insiders chimed in, with some fellow entertainers voicing private support, admitting they, too, felt the weight of harsh tax brackets and constant audits. Publicly, though, many stayed neutral, not wanting to stir the pot around a figure as iconic as Chaplin, or around their own financial dealings. Some film columnists used Bud's Chaplin comment to highlight broader injustices in show business. They noted how certain stars, by virtue of global fame or strategic residences, avoided the full brunt of U.S. taxation, while others who stayed stateside had little room to maneuver. In radio discussions, guests debated whether Chaplin was truly getting off easy or if his political controversies had, in fact, cost him just as much, albeit in a different way. At the heart of Bud's complaint lies an important question about international show business in the mid-20th century. Did having a massive international reputation grant stars like Chaplin an advantage when it came to legal or financial troubles? Bud's position suggests yes. If you lived in the U.S., your assets were under direct federal jurisdiction. If you took your career abroad, or, in Chaplin's case, felt compelled to leave, laws and politics might shift in your favor. Of course, Chaplin's situation was never just about taxes. Political ideology and public sentiment played huge roles in his departure. He faced controversies that extended well beyond financial matters, spanning everything from accusations of communist sympathies to moral scrutiny in the press. Yet, for Bud, it boiled down to one glaring reality: Chaplin could operate from a safer distance, while Bud remained in Uncle Sam's immediate orbit. Fans who adored both Abbott and Costello sometimes voiced frustration on Bud's behalf. "Why does it feel like our own government is driving our most beloved comics into ruin?" asked one letter to an entertainment magazine. This sentiment resonated with those who felt America should celebrate, not penalize, entertainers who had done so much to lift national morale. Others, however, took a more pragmatic approach, pointing out that Chaplin's freedom wasn't exactly free. He was dogged by press attacks, political gatekeeping, and the potential loss of his American audience. In interviews with local radio stations, some fans expressed sympathy for both men, recognizing that the system could be unpredictable and harsh regardless of where a star chose to live. Bud's mention of Chaplin goes beyond mere name-dropping. It signifies his sense of betrayal, not just by tax authorities, but by a Hollywood machine he felt was no longer protecting its own. He saw Chaplin's departure and relative freedom as evidence that stardom, once global, could place you beyond certain legal constraints that felt insurmountable to Bud. Star exodus and tax authorities. One of the fascinating pieces of mid-20th century Hollywood history is that certain American stars sought refuge in Europe, not just for creative exploration, but often for tax advantages. Some found roles in European cinema or moved abroad to avoid punishing tax rates in the United States. This outward migration was sometimes referred to informally as tax exile. Bud Abbott's remark that the tax authorities are turning us all into thieves might ring like hyperbole, but it speaks to the desperation he felt. When faced with losing every asset and every shred of independence, it's human nature to explore any means, legal or otherwise, to hold on to what you have. Thankfully, Bud clarifies that while the system might seem harsh, the individual collectors he dealt with treated him with courtesy. This nuance is crucial. It shows Bud's ability to separate the bureaucracy of federal tax law from the actual humans carrying out their duties. He acknowledges that they could have displaced him entirely but showed compassion to let him remain in his own home, at least temporarily. Final struggles and farewell. Finally, Bud Abbott succumbed to cancer at age 76. He passed away at home, in Woodland Hills, another suburban region of Los Angeles known for hosting many retired or semi-retired entertainers. Considering everything that Bud endured in his later years, financial turmoil, the loss of his comedic partner, the erosion of public adulation, one can only imagine the sense of exhaustion he might have felt at the end. Yet for all the hardships that shadowed his last years, news of Bud's passing triggered a surge of sympathy and nostalgia from fans around the globe. Newspapers ran heartfelt obituaries that recounted the beloved comedic routines he had brought into households for decades. Longtime admirers, many of whom had grown up laughing at Abbott and Costello sketches, penned letters to local papers and posted public tributes. At the time, these often took the form of phone-in radio dedications and thoughtful handwritten notes mailed directly to the family. The outpouring of support was not limited to everyday fans. Former co-stars, studio staff, and other comedians took to the media, reminiscing about Bud's razor-sharp timing and unwavering professionalism. In television specials hastily put together by local stations, surviving Hollywood personalities remembered him as a warm, approachable colleague who was quick to share a joke even when burdened by his own financial and personal struggles. Showbiz journalists, eager to offer a balanced perspective, contrasted Bud's final years of hardship with the earlier Hollywood euphoria he once embodied, underscoring just how drastically fortunes could shift in the entertainment world. Meanwhile, comedy clubs from Los Angeles to New York City held small memorial events, where budding performers and veteran comedians alike raised a glass in Bud's honor. Many recalled the distinct impact he had on American comedy, his seamless collaboration with Lou Costello, his knack for setting up jokes, and the fact that even as the straight man, he displayed a level of comedic finesse that anchored their routines. Younger fans, who had only experienced Abbott and Costello through television reruns, were astonished to discover the extent of Bud's contributions behind the scenes. In the days following his death, local radio hosts took calls from listeners, many of whom openly wept while recounting their favorite Abbott and Costello sketches, proof that Bud's comedic legacy had managed to transcend time and generational divides. Although he spent his final moments far from the roaring crowds and studio lights, the sentiments expressed in newspapers, letters, and on the airwaves confirmed that his comedic genius had left an indelible mark on popular culture. And so, with this poignant glimpse of Bud Abbott gazing through a window onto brown lawns and faded memories, we set the stage for a life that truly embodies the profound weight of past stardom. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into his story, revealing how triumph and tragedy intertwined to shape one of Hollywood's most unforgettable comedic legends.